Welcome to Girls Name the podcast. If you've ever felt like you're in between who you were and who you're becoming, you're in the right place. We've been there, we are there, and we're walking through it together. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Instagram. However you heard about us today, we're glad you're here. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Girls Name the podcast. We are your co-hosts today, Kaylee Judge.
And I am your co-host, Michaela Daniels. We are so glad to be here. Another day. What are we talking about today, Kayla Judge?
Today we are talking about finding a church. I feel like I have talked to people recently actually about this and the process of finding a church, how to know it's the right one, and what to look for. So we're going to give some practical tips, things that we've both done, and just some encouragements around going through the process of church hunting and making the decision to settle down somewhere. But before we do that, we think it'd be helpful to give a little bit of background about each of our experiences with church, just growing up and then having moved post-college, kind of what that looks like now, and what it's looked like since moving. So, Michaela, do you want to share first?
Yeah. I thought of this joke that my pastor said where he said this a few weeks ago. He was like, yeah, I had a drug problem. Like, I was drugged to church, like, every single Sunday of my life. And, like, same. Like, definitely, like, I don't ever remember there being a time, like, genuinely we went to church. We didn't go to church only if we were, like, on our deathbeds. Like, I remember, like, we literally always went to church. Even, like, there was a Sunday, this is crazy looking back now, but my grandmother was, like, had a mini stroke. And my mom, and she lived with us at the time, and my mom took her to the hospital and we went to church. And just, I was all up in the church. And so it was not even a question of just, like, being active in church and going to church. Like, there was never ever a question of, like, oh, well, maybe I can skip church to go to, no. Oh my gosh. Wasn't allowed to have sleepovers most Saturdays because that would be a hindrance in getting to church. And anyways, so I very much grew up all up in the church, and honestly really grateful for that. And I think it obviously plays a huge role in my faith today and my knowing the Lord. But I think that what's really, like, helpful about college is being able to, like, for me, like, what was helpful about it was being able to, like, separate myself and be like, okay, wait a minute. Yes, I go to church. I've gone to church. I have a relationship with Jesus. But why do I do this? And there's actually a period of time that I didn't go to church in college for a number of reasons. And then, like, had to rediscover for myself what that looked like and how to be a part of a church. And so that was definitely, like, a hard season. But since then, I have now moved and live in North Carolina. And yeah, the first Sunday that I got here, just tried out a church. And it was a church that I had known about prior to. My dad had told me about this church, and I knew about it and knew who the pastor was. And that is the church that I still go to almost 3 years later. And I visited one other church and like, hated it. It was really bad. It was actually funny because at my current church, I went to the other church the same Sunday that I was at my current church. And so I had visited the church that I go to now, and then had some kind of, like, event, like a little, like, women's connection event after the service. And so I had a name tag on. And so then my roommate and I went and got in the car and drove to this other church. And I, like, get out of the car, and this man is like, "Good morning, Michaela." And I was like, wow, how does he know my name? Like, I was freaking out. I freaking left my name tag on. That was so awkward. Wearing a name tag to a place anyways, but fun fact. So long story short, grown up in the church my whole life, and because I have a relationship with Jesus, have made the conscious choice to continuously be in the church. And it is one of the absolute biggest parts of my life. So yeah. What about you, Kaylee?
Awesome. I love that. That's so funny, showing up to church with a name tag on that
Crazy
you've never
behavior.
I don't think I knew that story. So I started going to church when I was in high school. I was a like kind of end of junior year of high school, going into senior year was when I really started going every Sunday. We went sometimes when I was a kid, mainly like for Easter, or we'd go see like the Christmas play and things like that if they had like extracurricular things going on. I did go to vacation Bible school maybe like once or twice or something over the summer, that I can remember at least. But I really started going to church in high school. Then I got baptized, kind of the start my senior year of high school. I got saved, then baptized, and yeah, have been kind of involved with churches ever since. I went to two different colleges, so first college I tried like two churches and got plugged into a women's group there, and then of course second college where Michaela and I went, I don't know if I tried any. No, I might have gone to two different ones, and just picked one there. I wasn't super involved just because I was involved on campus with church things and different groups like that. But yeah, since moving out here to Arizona, I have gotten plugged in with a church, which has been great. I've been going there two full years now, just about. And I tried two other churches. One of the other churches actually I was going to pretty consistently for a number of months, but I loved it, and I still think it's a great church, but it was not close to me at all. And so all of the groups and community just weren't in my area, so it felt hard to feel connected. And I was like, surely there's a good church that's a little bit closer where the people actually live around me, which come to find out was true. I found out about the church actually from a coworker who goes to the same church, and I was kind of explaining to him what I like in churches and the style of teaching, because I really love to learn. I don't really like the motivational type preacher churches. I really like it when they have like maps and timelines and things like that up. And he was like, oh, you've got to come try it. And I went one Sunday, joined a small group, and haven't looked back since. So it's been great. And that took maybe 6 to 8 months to really get settled in at that one. But yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. I think it's cool too because our stories are very different. Of like, I grew up in the church and you didn't, and so and like you had a different story in terms of, by the time I was in high school, it was just like, this is what we do, this is the natural rhythm. Versus being, I cannot imagine being a high schooler and not having a foundation with Jesus or a foundation of church, and then being like, okay, I'm going to make this decision for myself, which is, I think, is so cool and just like so commendable to be able to look back and be like, wow, like your faithfulness then is serving you now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a funny time, like late high school, early college, to become a Christian, because I feel like that's when a lot of people kind of go off the rails, if you will, or just start questioning everything. I guess I jumped the gun questioning everything, and then the answer was Jesus, so there you have
There you go.
it.
I love it.
But all of this to say is, it's pretty obvious, I feel like, for a lot of Christians that, oh, I should be in church, I should go to church. But why? Why is church important? Why does it matter? And what really is the point? Why can't I just stay home and read my Bible to myself? Why do I have to go to church?
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a great conversation, especially in light of post 2020, post the pandemic. I think we now have this whole slew of online church. And obviously there are different reasons, and medical and whatever that looks like, where there are people that cannot attend church. And so there's a beautiful space of, wow, we now have access to be able to stream church and people can be in fellowship that way. But there's another end of, there are some people that now just like press play and hit a button when they are fully able-bodied and capable to be able to be in the house of God, but due to laziness, sorry, hate to say it, but I think laziness plays a role. I think also there's fear, and that fear is very valid, because it is scary of okay, I'm stepping into this place, and there might be religious, like past religious trauma and hurt. And I'm not trying to just like brush that aside, but there also is a space of, okay, now I'm coming into a new place, and maybe am I having those expectations on this new place that I haven't even done, I don't know anything about, and there's new people, and so many dynamics, and and some people have social anxiety and social fears, and those are very real as well. And so I don't know. I think there's so many things. I think it can be so. I think it's very individualized for every single person. But I think the number one reason that people don't go to church, of, oh, well, I could go, but I'm just going to stay home, is that they don't have anyone holding them accountable. And in order to have people to hold you accountable, you have to go to church, And so it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? However, I think that that plays a large role. And my church is fairly large, and it is easy to just be a number. It's easy to slip in and slip out. It's easy just to fade away. And there is so much, for me, has been so much benefit and beauty in getting to honestly just be known in my church, and be known by the people that like it's like, oh my gosh, they're Michaela, like, hey. And I do life with so many of my people, and so church is like, you know it's fun in terms of like, oh my gosh, like there's all my girlies, like there's all my small group friends, and friends from here and here, and all these different walks of life, and it's beautiful. And there's just such a space in which we miss that, not even like, yes, there's a space, and like we miss the reality that it is so important to be in the house of God. Like, it is a joy, it is a privilege, as American Christians. Like, I just hope that we hold tightly to the fact that we get to worship the Lord in freedom. But also too, there's this beautiful space of like getting to be with the body of Christ, like genuinely like encourages us and lifts us up in ways that we would maybe never otherwise be lifted up and encouraged. And so I think church is just such a huge plays a huge role in terms of our community.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I feel like it can feel, we're walking with God, we're walking with the Lord through life, but there are still times when you can feel lonely, and you can feel lonely even when you have community, of course, but it can curb some of those feelings when you are truly plugged in, when you're involved, when you have a small group that you go to, when you're serving at church Sunday mornings, or whatever it looks like in that regard. Or if you sit in the same area and the people are looking out for you, or sending you a text message, hey, I was thinking about you, I didn't see you today, or haven't seen you in a while, would love to catch up. Being known and being seen can really go a long way for a lot of people, and I probably think for everyone, because we're all human.
Yeah.
Trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
So
I think too. Sorry, did you have another thought?
No.
I think too, the aspect of being known by people that aren't the same age as you too is so vital.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool that like I have church, and I'll go to service, and then I like walk up the stairs, and then every Sunday there's this like sweet little 7-year-old lady that I know and see often and get to hang out with, and she's praying. She does like the prayer team, so she's praying during that service. So I go upstairs, she's coming out, and I always give her a hug and say hi to her, and she asks me how I'm doing, and she's so cute. She's like, you look beautiful today, and she says that every single Sunday, and like just it's amazing. And then I go and I walk in, and I serve 8th grade girls who sometimes drive me up a wall, but I love them. And I serve, and I like lead with like 40-year-old women who have kids that are the age of the kids that I serve. And I learn so much from them about marriage and life, and things that look totally different than my life. And that's vital. Like, that's the body. The body is more than just, yes, obviously having friends, in between all of that, there's friends, and there's interactions, and there's great things too, but there's something so beautiful and important in the space of like, man, people that I would never ever interact with. Like, why on earth like do I just know this 7-year-old lady? The body of Christ. And that's a gift.
Yeah. It is really sweet, and those relationships, I feel like, are, especially with the older folks, they're very encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
I have found in the church, which we always need a little extra of, I think.
Agreed.
But church is so important. Michaela and I have had wonderful, albeit also some negative experiences, but overall wonderful experiences in the church and community. But there's also the hard part of it, which Michaela did touch on. If you have past church hurt and things like that, going in and finding a church. So we did want to just touch for a little bit on the real issues that can come up with finding a church, and that it is scary, and there is that fear that people are going to know that I don't go here regularly. I'm not going to fit in. I even have had people that I've invited to church ask me, oh, what should I wear? Am I allowed to wear jeans? Should I wear nice clothes? And you don't think about those things when you go to the church regularly. It's just like, oh, this is how it goes here. But for newcomers, it can be really daunting to kind of stand out in the crowd, as Michaela might have experienced while she was wearing her name tag at the church she visited. But yeah, can we talk just a little bit? That was kind of one example. We talked about past church hurt and not taking that and assigning it to all churches. But is there anything else that kind of comes to your mind that you might think would be difficult for people to overcome when looking for a church?
I think, obviously I talked extensively about community, but I think, before you have community, you're lonely. And that's really, really common. It's like, wait a minute, how do I even find these people? Like, y'all are having these conversations about meeting and seeing these people. And I just want to be so frank and honest. I've gone to my church for 2.5 years, and there was a struggle for quite some time. Even though I knew a good portion of people and had some community in different aspects, I struggled to be like, do I belong here? And how do I'm longing to fit in, I'm longing to belong. And I think it's really easy for us in our generation to be like, well, if it doesn't click, if it doesn't fit the first time, if I don't get exactly what I want, if it doesn't just magically perfectly unveil itself, then I don't want it. And I'm just gonna just leave it, because I can't continue to press in and feel the emotions of the loneliness and all of those things. And I just want to encourage whoever feels that way, because there is this beautiful gift of getting to press in with the Lord and say, wait a minute, God, I know that I need this. I know that you command us to have this as believers in Jesus. And because you command us to have this, because I know I need this, help me to find these people. Help me to be bold. Help me to reach out. And so I just want to encourage you I'm proud of you for going to church. I'm proud of you for putting yourself out there. Don't for any moment and any time doubt that the church, the body of Christ, is not where you're supposed to be, because it is. And even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, is when you need the church. And so don't throw in the towel because you're like, well, I'm not getting filled in the way that I want to be filled. I'm not getting what I want and what I deserve, because sorry, hot take, hate to say it, but yes, the church is for us, and it's for us to learn and to grow, but also church is not about you.
Yeah, I think some good points here for the not knowing how to plug in and things like that. Look at their small group options, look at their serving options, and you can do that before you go visit a church. So we're not just talking here about, oh, you found the church. It's you're in the process of searching. Get specific. There's nothing wrong with that. For me, I visited churches that, from what I could tell on their website, had churches for young single women. And that's because that's the community I was in. All the other churches didn't really have small groups for that, so I was getting placed with groups of people who were married for several years with children. And I was love that I can learn from you, but we don't understand each other in the current place of life that either of us are in. So that's one of the big reasons I ended up at this church, because they had a group that fit me, and that's what I was needing, especially being here alone. I didn't know anyone here, so I really needed those people to connect with. If you're super passionate about a certain area of serving, maybe it's foster care ministries, maybe it's youth, maybe it's like kids sport teams or something. Find a church that lets you serve in that capacity and go visit them. So do some research. Doing research on the church will help you not have to look around so much. Like Michaela tried out 2 churches, I tried out 3. The last place I lived, I went to 2 different ones. And the reason is because I researched online, made sure that their statements of faith were solid, that I agreed with them, watched a sermon or 2 online to see what the style was, and then checked to see what their small group options were. And that saved probably a ton of time, which when you're trying to find people that you connect with in a church community that you can start getting rooted in, it's important not to waste time. So it's going to take a while no matter what. Let's not elongate the process by just randomly going places that just aren't suited for you because you just didn't check beforehand. So if you've not done that, highly encourage it. I'm definitely like a research person, so that works well for me. For some of you, you're going to be like, it sounds like homework. I promise the homework is worth it.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, and I think like you get what you put in, and so that's with everything, obviously. And so you get community when you choose to plug in and to go to a small group and to show up and to introduce yourself and do the uncomfortable, awkward thing. Like, you know what you get in return, like friends. Like genuinely, there's a friend, the first small group that I ever tried out and that I'm not in anymore, which it was great for the season, and I've moved on. But the first friend that, like, I sat next to her and I looked at her and I was like, hi, I'm Michaela, and I was so uncomfortable and awkward and all the things. And I'm not an awkward person, but I just was feeling real awkward and was just trying to learn, like, what does it look like as an adult to to do this. And so I looked at her and introduced myself, and she now lives in a different part of the world, and I went last year to go visit her in that part of the world. Like, you never know what God's gonna get to do in your life when you just like choose to step out and choose to be like, okay, Lord, you're with me, I'm gonna be okay, and like, please, like, do something and let me like meet people and like help me to engage. And I'm not saying every single, you might just turn and then there's your husband or there's your best friend, your maid of honor, but maybe and maybe even just for a season of like looking at someone and being able to be like, hey, like, let's like band together and like be a little less alone in the middle of this, and let's talk and let's get to know each other. But you have to do the work too. It's not going to just come magically to you. It's not going to just magically appear and people are going to appear in your life, and then before you know it, you're at all the birthday parties and having all the fun. It doesn't happen that way. There is work that has to be put in to it.
Yeah, very true. Lots of legwork involved, but legwork that is worth it.
So worth it,
I think, is the point that we're getting at.
So
what was that?
I just said so worth it. Like, just affirming.
I just said sorry. I was like, why are you apologizing?
No.
Also, for our viewers, I'm just going to address this. I didn't consider the fact that we're recording later at night. And we didn't turn on any lights. So it has progressively been getting much darker.
I've like been sitting there and I'm like, she's just gonna like disappear. Like, it's just darker and darker. It's so funny. Yeah, I thought you were gonna get up at one point.
Later, I just didn't think about it. It's okay. Next time it's later in the evening, I'll put a light in front of me. If anyone knows me, I'm highly anti overhead lighting, and so these are the prices that we pay. So
wait, this is a complete side rail. Like, it's like complete. But have you seen the show Love on the Spectrum?
Okay, I've seen the prior seasons. I'm not caught up. I've not watched the recent one.
Fair. I won't, this isn't a spoiler, but long story short, which, first of all, completely shameless plug. Watch this show, because it literally, first off, I cry every episode, basically. I'm like blubbering, and I don't cry. And it's just beautiful. And anyways, it's about people on the spectrum finding love and going on dates and learning to find themselves in the process. Anyways, it has nothing to do with finding a church. But long story short, 2 of the people are looking for a house. They're trying to buy a house. And every single house they go into, or every room, the guy is like looking at the light bulbs, and he's like, oh, it's a certain type of light bulb. He's like, if it's this type of light bulb, like, we can't live here. And he, like, every single room. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Like, he hates the fluorescent lights, which I also, too, am anti-fluorescent lights. I am
I
sitting in
agree.
it, but,
See, you're better than I. You were like, I'll sacrifice so that way the lighting stays on. Meanwhile, I'm over here by a window and the sun has set. So,
eh,
anyways,
happens.
anyways,
Anyways, back to
hopefully
church.
that was entertaining for someone. um, Back to it though. So, looking for a church. We've talked about why we do it, ways to get plugged in, and kind of like taking that step. But in terms of like what to look for and maybe red flags, can we talk a little bit about? I feel like we've talked about kind of what to look for. If there's anything to add, feel free. But red flags, misalignments. I know you talked about switching small groups. Has there ever been a time where like you switched churches? You can talk about just overall how to know, is this a right fit? Am I just being impatient? Do I need to give it time, or do I really need to try something different? Because I feel like it's hard to make that call.
Fair, yeah. I think definitely if you are seriously considering a church, give it about a month. Give it like a good chunk of time, so that you can, hopefully observe like communion, baptism, like a couple of different things, and see how do they handle these things. What are their takes on them? How do they operate? But I guess to answer the question, I I think you need to know, what do I value? What are the non-negotiables? Kind of like when you're trying to find a man. Like, what are the non-negotiables? What absolutely, like, if it doesn't have this, I have to leave. And make sure that that is aligned with scripture and not just with your ideologies. For example,
That's a good call.
if the church is, oh, well, they're very, like, liturgical, of, like, they do a lot of standing up and sitting down and speaking and repetition and call and answer and response and things like that. Like, that's not that's not an unbiblical thing. That's not a bad thing. Like, if that's not what you're looking for, if you're like, oh, that's just not really my thing, like, that's okay. Then, like, maybe that's not the place for you. That's okay. But don't don't choose a church, or choose what the things that, like, I have to have these things solely because it's all about, like, you and your own preferences.
Yeah, and I think very similar to that, something that came up for me was just not focusing on the entertainment factor. It shouldn't be to entertain you for an hour on a Sunday. It's not a concert. It isn't a motivational speech. You're trying to learn about God, learn about His Word, and be connected to His people. And so it's not about those things. And very closely to that is that it's not about your feelings. It's about, is the truth being preached? Is it being shared? And are people being held accountable to that? Not, do you leave feeling great about yourself? Do you leave feeling like you're going to have the best day ever? Because conviction's good. And sometimes at church, you should leave feeling convicted. And just because you leave feeling like, oh gosh, Lord, I'm feeling heavy-hearted about this because of what I learned today in church, doesn't mean it's a bad church. It probably means it's a pretty good church. If they're preaching from the Word and encouraging you to live more like the Lord and pursue Him more. So,
Yeah, I was just going to add to this, the fact of, like, sometimes what's preached is not going to necessarily, like, speak to you or hit you, or, like, sometimes we go to church for this emotional, cathartic experience to cry and feel close to God, and sometimes you might leave church and be like, okay, that was a good message, and it didn't really apply to me. And that's because there's so many people in the church and you're not the only one.
So when I first started going to church, my parents were not going to church. I was going alone, which is okay. But there got a point where I was getting frustrated with the church I was going to, for partially good reason. It was kind of a time in the church experience where I needed to find somewhere else to go. But my dad actually told me, he said, you don't go to church every Sunday for you, sometimes the sermon's for the person next to you, and that person really needs you to be there next to them. So don't miss Sunday. And that really changed my mindset.
That's good. Yeah, obviously, a lot of our listeners are, in their 20s and 30s, single, not married and things like that. Like in the season that you're in, you might be looking all around being like, God, I'm just waiting for you to answer my prayers of a husband and a family and all of those kinds of things. When God is like, lock in, right here because this is the place that I have for you, and this is where I want you to be faithful, so you can learn how to be faithful and learn how to love me, so that one day in the future, whenever I have what I have for you like comes, that you can be faithful then and know like all of what you know because you were faithful in this season and faithful to be a church member, to be a servant, not just to like be filled and get what we want, because that's not the walk with Jesus. That's not what walking with Jesus is for. So,
Yeah.
this is your wake up call of like, lock in, tighten up, friend, with all love.
Lock in, yeah. Make a decision, get committed, plant your roots. Roots take a while to grow. I don't know if you know anything about plants, but they take a bit. So you better start getting in that soil. And we've kind of been talking about this. We kind of just naturally flowed into it, trusting God in the process. I think a lot of what trusting God looks like in this, at least in my opinion, and you can argue me on this, is fine. But I think a lot of what trusting God in this looks like is just being disciplined. Going every week, picking a small group, going to it. Maybe you have to try out a few different ones to see which ones you jive with. Totally fine. Signing up to serve, and just being committed to that, being faithful in it and being disciplined in it. And over time, as you're watering the soil and giving it sunlight, it will start to grow.
Amen. Absolutely.
What do you think trusting God in the process looks like? If not that, you can always just say.
Yeah, I think that, and I've seen that firsthand in my life, where, like I said, there was a period where I was like, like I'm at this church and the people are great, but I don't feel planted and rooted. And literally last night was driving home from my small group. That is one of the biggest absolute like blessings of my life, especially in this season. And I was just driving home and I was like, man, like, look at what God's done. And I can't even fathom, I can't even comprehend how good he has been to me. But it took time and it wasn't easy. And this time last year, I was like, it's not possible. It doesn't feel possible. And now I'm living in the middle of these answered prayers of me like begging God to give me community that I longed for, and I'm living in it, and I'm just overjoyed. And so just know, like, it's so possible, and the Lord is doing something, and he's working in your waiting. He's working in the middle of you being like, I'm in this awkward in between and I don't want to be. He's working. So like, be still, be with him, know that he's God, trust him, trust his heart. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
That's awesome. I love that. So I'm gonna leave everyone on that encouraging note. That was beautiful. I hope everyone feels encouraged by Michaela and I's experiences with church, and that you go find yours, get plugged in, and get growing. So our verse to leave you with today is Hebrews 10:24-25, which reads, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing."